Welcome to the deep dive. Today we are unpacking one of the most critical distinctions for anyone who operates under sustained pressure.
Mm.
Whether you're running a team, navigating a crisis, or just trying to live a meaningful life. We're talking about the difference between true resilience and its dangerous counterfeit, rigidity.
That's exactly right. We have stacks of sources here, and they
Yeah.
cover psychology, leadership, and even some, surprisingly powerful theological analogies.
Okay.
Our mission for you, the listener, is to really extract the exact reasons why the people in organizations who adapt consistently outperform those who just brace for impact.
I think that's the hook right there. The immediate hook is realizing that the very impulse we have to hold on tighter, to work harder, to maintain perfect control, that's often the thing that eventually cracks us.
Yeah.
So many high achievers confuse staying strong with just tightening their grip. And that instinct can silently transform genuine strength into this chronic, unbearable strain.
It absolutely can. Rigidity masquerades as resilience. It offers this false comfort of certainty, but pressure. Well, pressure always exposes the difference.
So we're going to explore why holding on to a failing map is maybe more dangerous than setting a flexible compass.
That's the core of it.
Let's start with that common misconception. We're calling it the myth of the iron spirit.
Mm-hmm.
We frequently mistake spiritual maturity or, professional toughness for absolute immovability. We see the leader who never shows weakness and we think, wow, they're strong. Why are we so drawn to that?
Because immovability feels safe. Yeah. It really does. It offers a kind of psychological security. But geology, sociology, biology, they all teach the same harsh lesson.
Interesting.
That which is hard is often brittle. You apply enough pressure to a stone or to iron, and it doesn't adapt.
It shatters.
It shatters. So rigidity isn't strength. It's a fear-based, maladaptive coping mechanism.
So if my body or my mind senses chaos, what's the mechanism happening inside me? How does my brain trigger this rigid defense?
It all centers on the amygdala. That's the brain's threat detection center.
Okay.
So when uncertainty hits a confused market, a personal failure, a major global shift, the amygdala just flares up. Our default response then is to try to impose order and control.
We create strict rules.
We create rules, we suppress emotions, we double down on outdated systems, anything to force the chaotic world back into a predictable box.
And this ties directly into a critical concept I saw in the sources, the need for cognitive closure,
Yes.
NFC.
NFC. It describes the brain's deep-seated need to reach a definite conclusion immediately when it's faced with ambiguity.
So the unknown feels like a threat.
A huge threat. The rigid person registers that unknown as a psychological attack, and so they latch onto the first available solution or rule or narrative that offers certainty.
Even if that solution is just wrong.
Even if it's completely wrong or incomplete, yeah.
That sounds incredibly dangerous in a dynamic environment. I mean, if you're a leader with high NFC, you're basically choosing speed over accuracy,
Yeah.
certainty over adaptation.
Precisely. It's a cognitive shortcut, and it's rooted in anxiety. It's just easier to say, I just need to work 18 hours a day because that's what a dedicated person does, than to admit.
To admit, the system I built is broken, and I don't know the answer, and I might need help.
Exactly that. This refusal to process new disruptive data is what manifests as sort of a dogmatic intolerance of uncertainty. They mistake their resistance to discomfort for actual resilience.
And that resistance is not free, is it? It sounds exhausting.
It is.
Which leads us right to the high cost of the clenched fist. We confuse pushing harder with actual progress, and in the process, we transform true strength into chronic strain. What are the habits that build this brittle structure inside us?
The sources point to 4 key maladaptive traps. You have emotional suppression, overworking, perfectionism, and relational avoidance.
Okay, and those work for a little while.
Temporarily, sure.
Yeah.
You suppress the doubt, you check the box, you meet the deadline. But that whole approach creates an internal structure that is designed for maximum stress absorption, not for recovery.
So it works until the next wave hits.
And then it cracks.
And the cost is far beyond just being tired. You mentioned a pretty profound biological consequence here.
Oh, the biological cost is massive and cumulative. Chronic rigidity keeps the body in a state of chronic sympathetic activation.
So you're always on.
Always. Think of it as mentally and biologically holding up the ceiling. You're constantly alert, constantly ready for the next crisis. You never fully switch off. And the inevitable result of that is allostatic load.
Yeah, allostatic load. For someone who hasn't heard that term, what does that feel like in daily life?
It's the constant wear and tear on the body from that chronic stress exposure. And it doesn't feel like a sudden breakdown. It feels more like a subtle decay. It's the inability to sleep deeply, constant low-grade illnesses, persistent muscle tension, or maybe that sense that your cognitive speed is just dropped a notch.
It's the vessel shattering from the inside.
That's a perfect way to put it. The internal pressure exceeds its structural integrity.
And relationally, I can imagine the effect is even more toxic, especially in leadership.
Absolutely. The leader who refuses to pause or reconsider a failing strategy, they don't inspire anyone. They infect the entire organization with their fear.
Oh, that's a strong word, infect.
It is. Their refusal to be vulnerable or to admit doubt leads to decision paralysis and missed opportunities because everyone else is trying to accommodate the rigid leader's need for certainty rather than responding to reality.
So we have to flip the script. If resilience isn't about being unshakable, what is it?
True resilience is about adaptability. It's the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties, not the capacity to prevent the difficulty from ever happening. It's like neuroplasticity, but for your life.
Okay, so if the body breaks down under that strain, we have to look for a model that survives it. And this leads to this really powerful analogy I saw in the sources, the contrast between the rigid oak and the flexible willow.
Yeah, the imagery is so potent, isn't it? The oak, so rigid, risks being completely uprooted because it refuses to bow in the hurricane. But the willow survives precisely because it knows how to bend, sometimes all the way down to the ground. True strength isn't in how hard we can clench our fists in defense.
But in how gracefully we can open our hands.
In acceptance and adaptation,
Yeah.
exactly.
And if we look for a sort of ultimate theological grounding for this flexibility, we find it in the concept of kenosis.
The self-emptying of Christ.
That's the ultimate pivot away from rigidity, isn't it?
It really is. The Creator, who is immutable in his divine nature, became profoundly adaptable in his method. He became a creature. The infinite became an infant.
So if God is that flexible in method to save us, we can't really justify being rigid in our own little methods or systems.
We can't. Kenosis implies the capacity to shed status and ego for the sake of the mission.
Which reframes professional flexibility entirely. It means sometimes the most powerful act is stepping out of the role you defined for yourself.
Exactly. And to train a whole population for this, God led Israel to the wilderness using the manna principle. He took them away from the predictable Nile River model.
Where effort equals a fixed result.
Right. And he put them into a dynamic, shifting landscape where yesterday's success meant absolutely nothing for today.
And that command to gather manna for only one day, that was the psychological intervention.
It was a surgical strike against the innate human desire to hoard security. Rigidity is all about trying to solve tomorrow's problems with today's resources.
And the manna was designed to break that cycle.
It was. The Israelites who tried to save it for the next morning found it bred maggots and spoiled.
The image of mental maggots is just so effective. Why is hoarding today's strength for tomorrow's hypothetical problems so poisonous?
Because that effort is driven by fear, not by faith or real necessity. When we hoard security, we introduce anxiety, dread, and exhaustion, the mental maggots, into our present moment.
So the stored energy, which was grace for one day, becomes a burden the next.
It becomes a burden.
So the resilient mindset then, trained by this manna principle, is the capacity to say, I have exactly what I need for this hour.
I'll gather the strength and the grace for the next bridge when I get to it. It forces a rhythm of absolute daily reliance and adaptability. Okay, so if we accept this radical shift from the iron spirit to the willow spirit, we need some specific actionable tools.
Right. How do we build this in our daily lives?
You need strategic, relational, and emotional flexibility. Hashtag. Hey, strategic flexibility. Compass over map.
Let's start with strategy. The world is often described by that acronym VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous.
Right.
So holding a detailed map in a VUCA world is, well, it's an exercise in futility. We have to be committed to the mission, the true north, the compass, but be totally agnostic about the method, the map.
And this is where we can apply what I like to call the pencil rule.
The pencil rule. Okay.
Strategic rigidity writes plans in ink and then gets angry when, God or the environment uses an eraser.
Right.
Strategic resilience writes plans in pencil, ready to edit immediately. It aligns with that proverb, the heart of man plans his way, but the Lord establishes his steps. We do the work, but we hold the outcome lightly.
That pre-mortem exercise you mentioned sounds incredibly counterintuitive, which probably means it works. How does legitimizing failure before it happens change a team's dynamic?
It reverses a cognitive bias we all have called hindsight bias. Instead of waiting for a failure and then blaming people,
You preempt the blame game.
you do. Before you execute a major plan, you gather the team and ask, imagine it is 1 year from now and this plan has failed spectacularly. Write down the story of why it failed.
So you're turning strategic pessimism into constructive preparation.
Exactly. It legitimizes doubt. It forces the quietest members of the team to voice their concerns without fear of being labeled negative, and it lets you build contingencies into the plan before the chaos hits. It makes the whole structure way more flexible. Hashtag B, relational flexibility, covenant versus contract.
Okay, so we've got our strategy in pencil, but the pressure we've been talking about, it often breaks down our relationships first.
Always.
Our relationships are meant to carry heavy loads like the Golden Gate Bridge, but they have to be designed to sway. I mean, that bridge can swing 27 feet side to side. How do we build that sway into our connections?
By understanding the difference between a contract and a covenant, rigid relationships are transactional contracts. If you perform, I meet your needs. If you fail, I leave.
Mm-hmm.
Resilient relationships are based on covenants. Even though you failed, I have pledged my faithfulness, so I will stay and we will adapt together. A covenant absorbs the risk of failure. A contract just manages it.
The major trap here for the rigid person is becoming what you call a historian of grievances.
Oh, yeah. Meticulously keeping a detailed scoreboard of wrongs committed against them.
And that's a defense mechanism.
Totally.
Yeah.
It's used to justify their own rigidity, their own superior position. It creates relational deadlock because the relationship can only move forward if the debt is repaid.
Whereas resilience is the art of the reset.
Exactly. Forgiveness acts as the mechanical release of that debt.
And this lets us use that key tool for conflict resolution you mentioned, reframing the issue.
Yes. We have to stop framing conflict as the rigid me versus you, this face-to-face opposition, and reframe it as us versus the issue, shoulder-to-shoulder alignment.
When we're shoulder to shoulder, we move from blame to iteration.
We stop asking who is wrong and start asking what is wrong and how we can fix it together. Hashtag C war. Emotional agility, the art of lament.
Finally, we have to address the internal engine. Suppressing pain leads to spiritual bypassing. Using spiritual maxims like, I'm too blessed to be stressed, to deny painful feelings, which just depletes your cognitive resources.
If 80% of your mental energy is being used to hold the door shut on uncomfortable emotions,
Yeah.
anger, grief, anxiety, you have no margin left for adaptation,
We need a pressure valve.
a reliable one. And the biblical technology of lament, which fills over a third of the Psalms, is precisely that.
Lament isn't just complaining, though, is it? How does it move us toward resilience?
It's the transition point between pain and praise. It allows us to feel the full, brutal weight of our present reality. This loss is terrible. My grief is immense. While simultaneously affirming the reality of the unchanging anchor.
But you are capable, and I will still trust.
Exactly. It provides the emotional honesty required for true healing and adaptation.
And the specific tool for that moment when stress spikes and you can't think clearly, it's called name it to tame it.
It's a powerful neurological hack. When stress rises, you stop. Instead of just saying, I feel bad, you drill down and you label the exact emotion. Is it humiliation, powerlessness, abandonment?
You get specific?
Very specific. Neuroscience shows that simply labeling the emotion, putting language to the feeling, shifts brain activity from the emotional center, the amygdala, to the prefrontal cortex, the logical center. It instantly restores your ability to think clearly and adaptively. You turn an overwhelming feeling into a manageable problem. Hashtag tag outro.
So what does this all mean for us today? I think what I'm hearing is that resilience isn't a single trait. It's a braid. It's weaving together theology, psychology, and community.
That's right.
And it really hinges on embracing a key paradox. To be truly flexible, you have to have a point of absolute immovability.
That's it.
Yeah.
We must anchor our identity, not in our job title or our 5-year plan, but behind the curtain, in the unchanging truth of God. This anchor is hope as the ultimate stabilizer.
You know, an anchor doesn't stop the ship from moving in the storm.
No, it stops the ship from drifting out of safe waters.
So when that anchor is secure, you gain radical freedom. You can afford to lose a job, or be wrong in an argument, or have a 5-year plan fail because your fundamental safety isn't at stake.
The tighter you hold to the unshakable truth, the looser you can afford to hold the temporary things of this world.
Which brings us to a final provocative thought. It comes from Admiral Jim Stockdale, a Vietnam POW. He identified what became known as the Stockdale paradox.
It's a powerful idea. He noticed that the relentless optimists in the prison camp,
Yeah.
they died first.
because they kept setting these rigid expectations. We'll be out by Christmas.
And they were crushed when those expectations failed, over and over. The resilient survivors, he said, were the ones who held two opposing thoughts simultaneously.
They faced the brutal, current facts of their situation.
And they maintained unwavering faith in the final outcome.
So the question for all of us is, which approach are you adopting today? Are you going to keep trying to be iron, or are you going to embrace the freedom of the willow?